I want to be optimistic with my vision. I think that we've heard many things about the poor state of the forests, how the legislation that we counted on didn't deliver exactly what we wanted from it, how we are looking at the backlash against the environmental legislation in general and specifically about the forests. But in my opinion, the change is inevitable. It's like if you look a little bit, a couple of years back on the climate policies and the level of the debate on the climate change and the drivers of the climate change, there were so many denialists. Our president was saying that we have 200 years worth of coal, yeah, and that we will depend on it. Now, such statements are just, no one is saying this. And I know that we expected much more in the 2019. Yeah, we hoped that now we will have super strong framework and we will change everything. We are encountering some difficulties. Yes, I admit, but I think it works a little bit like a sinusoid. We managed to do a lot in the last 5 years. We have legislation that was not there 5 years ago, and 10 years ago it was even impossible to think about it. Yes, we have a backlash now, but it is a moment, and if we mobilize, as Marta said, if we push the evidence to the society, if we continue doing what we are doing, I really strongly believe that we can make a change, and this sinusoid that is going up 2019, now it went a little bit down, will again come up, and we will have strong policies that will protect our forests for the future. About the specifics, I will not get into it. We all know what needs to happen, but I really strongly believe that the change is inevitable, and we will again see a rising tide in a couple of years, I hope.
Yeah, so coming from the monitoring perspective, I think my vision is that we have very open and transparent data and methods which are used to define the most crucial forests that we should be protecting. I really believe in the fair data principles, so that data should be free, openly available, reproducible methods. I think we talked about some figures which don't agree, and I think we should all be able to look back at those methods and reproduce what's been done. And I think this also democratizes forest monitoring, that everyone has access to information and can have a stake in making sure that our forests are protected as has been agreed, and that there's evidence that they can use that's easily available for people of all kind of technical abilities when it comes to forest monitoring, to take action where it's needed against potential illegal activities and so on.
Like, we are experiencing so many crises right now. It's very obvious. Like environmental crisis, climate crisis, biodiversity crisis, geopolitical crisis, economical crisis. It's a lot of crises everywhere. And we can have different attitude towards this crisis. There's also an option that we won't do anything, and let the crisis deal the damage. That's also very much related to the forest issue, but I don't think that's a good option, because we will be the victims of such attitude. We will not be the winners, we will be the losers, and the damage will be very huge. I think that at the same time we live in a period where there is unprecedented amount of precise knowledge of how the world actually works. We know. We don't have to guess. We don't have to believe. We know for sure, that the climate crisis is happening. The impact on forests is such as such, and we also know what needs to be done. Like, the proofs is on the table. But there is still a lot of denial. And I think that the denial is there because the crisis is not that prominent yet. Still, like, we still have the comfort to, let's wait a year or 2 or 5 or I don't know. But what is very clear from the data that we have, that the longer we hesitate, the more expensive the remedy will be, and the potential of the remedy will be lowered by that time as well. So it's good to start now and be effective. The more effective, the better. That's the case. I think that right now, if we stay in this setup that we have right now, then we will face a huge collapse of forests throughout Europe because of climate-induced changes. We have witnessed it already in the Central Europe, in the Southern Europe. Now, Northern Europe is, the place where it will be introduced. Maybe 5 years, maybe 10 years, maybe next year. I'm not sure. I'm very much sure that the plantations that are being majorly proposed there, or that are being, that represent the majority of forest stands, for instance, in Sweden and in Finland, will be the first to collapse, and it will be very, very pronounced, and there will be excuses, and sort of thing that we have witnessed in Germany, in Slovakia, in Czech Republic, and everywhere. But that doesn't change actually the logic behind that. Climate crisis will not allow us to do any more mistakes. It's really obvious. So, yeah, let's stick to the science. Let's follow the science. Let's be effective. Let's be persistent. Let's be active. Let's be loud. That's all very much needed for the sake of the damages that will come to really keep them low. The lowest possible. I might have sounded a little bit critical and skeptical towards the European Union, but let me be clear about that. I think that it's probably the best option that we actually have, a strong and solid European Union above, the individual member states, because you can see that the policy inside or within a single member state can switch very rapidly. But like European Union is more stable in this context. So let's keep it really based on democratical principles, on the rule of law, and let's fight for that, because it's very, very much needed. I don't think that there's a better option right now than the European Union. Also with regard to forests, the legislation that we have has been watered down, within the democratic process of decision making. But still, if it is going to be properly implemented, it will make the change. So let's fight for that implementation, and let's do it within really strong and united European Union.
Okay, I think we all share your opinion about the European Union. It's the best system, but we're all a bit frustrated with it at times. So I think we're all on the same page. Just to add my comment, I think we have to be also aware where we are on a global kind of a level, because we are on a point where we've never been before. It's an inflection point of global dimensions. It's crossing global boundaries, and probably lots of tipping points. We might have crossed a number of tipping points without even having noticed it yet. And so, there is such a massive change taking place, and the massive change is always a massive opportunity, because, the old systems, they crumble, the networks disappear, and usually it's also the time for a change in the value system. So I think, we might see much more massive change over the next years, and much more opportunity to move forward faster than we believe now, right now. So I think, we really have to sort of see all of this change. Also, it's a crisis, but we have to see that actually as an opportunity. Something old is going, something new is coming.
The question is how to be more effective, and the need, Mikhail, is clear that there needs to be pressure on lawmakers. But of course, as we saw with the Renewable Energy Directive, the environmental groups don't have the constituency behind them that the forest industry has, and so it's harder to exert real pressure on MEPs that they actually care about. And as you once observed to me, there was a notable absence of certain of the larger groups exerting real pressure. It was a bunch of small groups, a couple of whom are in this room. So I think the answer to that question is what Marta is doing and what we tried to do with the Forest Defenders Alliance in a digital way. She's doing it in a very concrete way. But I mean, Poland is so amazing. Like, to look at all those little groups, that map with all those little dots and all those forest initiatives, I mean, that must be unique in the EU, I think. I don't know, but if it seems like that is the answer, is connecting people with their own forests. And I don't know, I'm sort of synthesizing what I've heard here, and it's kind of confirming what I think is important already, but it's also helping me refine it. So I'd love to hear more from anyone who wants to talk about what they think is needed in terms of really enabling citizen action that will end up having an impact at higher levels.
If I can say something, I think that we have constituency, and this constituency is enormous because it's just the EU population, because forests are important for everyone. And I think that in Poland we had, when it comes to the Renewable Energy Directive revision, you mentioned it, we were in a good, we managed to promote or make people aware of the problem, but we had also a very good conditions to it. Exactly this mobilization and opposition against the pressure on the forests. And what we found the most effective was not speaking about carbon accounting, was not speaking about the flawed policies, but speaking about this forest is going to be cut down and burned. Right. And people, because they were relating to the forest and they were already pissed off that forests are being pressured and logged, that's why they didn't want it, and that's why, at least that's what I think, that's why also this problem was integrated somehow, that people also believed in it. So yeah, I agree that mobilization is important, but also we have to know that we have this constituency, and we have to also speak about it in understandable terms that people will be able to relate to.
So if I may add, I mean, it's not that all rosy in terms of Poland. And you can see we have almost 500 initiatives, but maybe it's 170, 100, maybe 200 that are really kind of long-term. So it's not so many. I have been trying to find out if it's an issue unique to Poland or not. So if you know more about other countries, I would be really interested to learn. And I can echo what Augustin said. If you look at the graphs I was showing about what's important for people with regards to forests, I think we have this constituency, but people in Poland, at least, they have thought for a long time that forest is it's like rocket science, like that it's so complicated that they cannot understand it. And once we translated the types of logging for them and we showed them what's going to happen, they found out that they can be agents of change. So I think empowering them to do it is important, and to do so, I believe that you have to mobilize both in real life, and you have to use digital tools also, but wisely. So, and the emphasis needs to be on their real life and on their needs and on how they are connected to the forest. And digital is just an addition. So it's a bit of a switching of a perspective, because just making them sign petitions is not enough. This issue needs to be more salient to them, and they need to see, for example, I think water is an amazing subject. First of all, it is important, we should all care about water because we cannot live without it. But also if you connect water to forests, you have people supporting you.
I agree to Mary that actually I think we have to link it to local issues or local people. That's why I liked, and that's why I was happy that we were actually partnering your organization in this small research. In Hungary is happening the same kind of local engagement, not linked to forest but to battery industry. So when the people really feel that battery industry development threatens their life locally, then you can mobilize them. And I think now we are setting up this network. Forest might be next, and with the battery factories we are actually linking to water, because a lot of battery factories are using quite a lot of water, and we try to say, okay, basically the new factories are creating water shortage. But then there is another level, the EU level, and I'd like to remind you that this is a civil EU presidency, and we have two Polish organizations. I just would like to say highlight to you that after Hungary, Poland is going to have the presidency, and we will be happy to hand over the civil presidency to you to take further the forest issue as well as the water. So please try to get this stick from us.
Yeah, just reinforcing this point here, I would say fortunately Poland is not so unique. It's good to have to see that in other countries we also have a high incidence of small citizen groups that are engaging against deforestation or misuse of forests. So it's really great to see. Maybe it's the highest density in Poland, but I think it's in Hungary, it's in Germany. There is even they are networked in Germany. The citizen groups that engage themselves against bad use of forests, BBEVS. It's going into the hundreds as well. So maybe the same dimension. And so just to add, I think there's a lot of potential in here. Mm-hmm. And I really appreciate the work of Citizen. And what was your NGO called in English? Forest and Citizen, yes, sorry. Now I should have learned it.
But I have a question, how do we channel this to the EU policies? Because it's focused on the national policies, no?
I just wanted to say I really appreciate the people's initiatives and local initiatives. I'm sprung from that myself. I've been working in many of these kind of groups. However, in northern part of Sweden, northern Finland, they are very sparsely populated. There are no people living there. And we have huge areas of forest there, and they will really not be protected by people because there aren't any people there. So we need other tools as well, and we mustn't forget that. That's just what I want to say. Thank you.
I want to add that maybe for the list of options that we have for improving the state of forests, capacity building for those small citizen groups. So how to engage actually, what you need. You need to learn about the legislation. Then you need to learn which politicians, so at which administrative level you have to start. You have to learn how to contact politicians and so on. This is, of course, often something that lay people are not into, right? This is for policy experts, and we can help citizens to become knowledgeable about how to engage, right? So there might be some potential in support of capacity building for citizens.
So I just wanted to say that this is exactly what we're doing, and maybe it will be useful if I mention more about this. There is this going on exactly now, this process to delineate and exclude some of the forests surrounding the cities. In Poland, it's in 9 large cities in Poland, and we have activists taking part in these deliberations, but also members of parliament, and they're now on the first name basis and working with them, asking them to send, for example, questions to the ministry because some of the things are not clear. And I think you can do exactly the same thing with at the European level, and I know that it's already being done. It's at the moment it's just an issue of scale, and I believe you do not need, large percentages. If you are able to mobilize people effectively and to build their capacity in various ways, because there are different capacities, also capacity how to network, but at the same time there are models of how to do it, and some social organizations have done it for ages, to give them the scientific knowledge, but also some soft skills. It can be done, and you don't need so many people. So it's just like 1%, 2%, 3% of active citizens. You can really change the world, but you just need to get that many.
Continue on this point. Global Forest Watch has a history of working with mainly tropical countries in order to provide local communities, indigenous peoples, with the tools and resources needed to monitor their own forests, and actually there's a peer-reviewed publication out there which demonstrates that those of them which have had these tools and are actively using them operationally to monitor their forests have managed to reduce deforestation. So maybe this is one of those cases where we can actually learn some lessons from the tropical countries who have been doing this already. And I think it may be worth visiting some of those use cases which are available to see how they've done it and how they've been successful.
I just want to stress one particular aspect. I fully agree that we need citizens to actually move the problem towards politicians. But I think that with regard to forests, this potential is heavily underrepresented or unused, let's say it like that. I was with my colleagues in European Parliament, we were struggling for a couple of years to actually improve the situation with animal welfare situation. We are also having the idea to have a commissioner that would have in his portfolio, in the name of the title of the portfolio, actually animal welfare, you know, because it was somewhere, but it was not in the title. And super heavy argument for that demand was actually that there were already 4 successful European citizen initiatives asking for NDKH, stop fuel farming, you know, and stuff like that. European Citizen Initiative is a format where a certain number of member states and at least 1 million of citizens have to sign that pledge in several months, you know. So it's have to be very quite effective, you know, quite fast, and then it is successful. And then have been, I'm not sure about the correct numbers, like only 10 successful ECIs in the whole history of European Union, but 6 out of them are related to animal welfare or environmental issues, you know. So the people actually proved to the Commission that they are very much concerned about this sort of problems. And you know, the Commission, when there's a successful European initiative, citizen initiative, they have to respond to that. They are not obliged to actually propose some legislation proposal, but they have to respond to that. But it's still very strong signal coming from citizens towards Commission and European Union in the regard. Well, there has not been a single European citizen initiative dealing with forests yet. You know, so this would definitely be a super heavy tool if we would have it. You know, some successful citizen initiative asking for reducing the use of biomass instead of protecting forests or something like that, or finding and protecting old growth forests or primary forests. We have seen the problems that need to be tackled. So let's maybe think also in this direction. It would be very useful to have such an initiative actually on the table. That would be a signal. That would be a really strong signal.
A big problem that I see is that Brussels is a bubble, no? Like it's already like a thing that everyone knows. And MEPs, sorry, not you, because you are working to improve forests, but they basically do whatever they want in Brussels during the voting, and no one is looking at them. No one knows even what they are voting about. No one even knows which laws are proposed. And even if they know the name, the laws are so complicated, so entangled, there are so many of them relating to each other that no one gets the big picture. I think we were even speaking yesterday that probably even there is no one person in the EU that knows everything about all the laws on the forest in detail, because there are so many of them that they are so complicated. So I'm not now trying to say that we should teach the citizens all of it, but we should, as NGOs, be this link. We should be the link. We should observe MEPs, what they're doing. We should be passing this information to the society, inform them why it is important, and pass the information back, what they want from the MEPs. We've been trying to do it in Pracownia to some degree, with better or worse effect. And doing this, I noticed exactly this thing, that we had the biggest opposition party in those times, part of EPP, in Poland, criticizing heavily the government that we had back then for putting pressure on forests. But then when I looked how they were voting in the European Parliament, when they actually could change something because 1 or 2 or 3 MEPs voting differently could basically change everything, they were voting always against environmental laws. So like I think there is a big gap there, and we should have more capacity. I know that it's always a question of capacity, and we know it everywhere. We need it everywhere, but we should have more capacity being this link and connecting this mobilization that we hear that is not only in Poland, it's in Germany, it's in Hungary, to decision makers and pushing them. A question, Michał, that if you think that it would be useful, no, like it could help. Yeah. No, that.
Yeah, the naming and shaming is useful, but at the same time, like I told you that please provide us with the facts, with the science, but it's not enough, you know. Like you can have that bunch of Nature papers, push it to the reporter, and he will then push it away and go on his way. We are actually living in a post-factual era. Let's face it. You know, there are facts. I'm very happy about them. They are super interesting and super useful and super important. But have you seen the graphics of the EPP with the Red Riding Hood? This is not factual. This is fear mongers. You know, this is fear porn. They are spreading fear. Look at that scared little girl and her what is that, sheep? It's ridiculous. But look where we are. We are going to shoot wolf because of this. You know, so this is what we are actually standing against. These people. Well, that's the question. I don't have the remedy for that because they are spreading lies and fear, and there we stand with our facts against them. You know, so I think that at the long term the facts will prevail because they will be proved. They will be proved facts because of the crisis that we are not going to avoid. But it's too late then, you know. So this is the question. Should we also induce the emotions, you know, the fears, the demagogy, the populism? I don't know. This is really a critical question.
Augustin, before anything, I want to brag. We had a show on Romanian national radio, and it was called How They Vote. And it was so funny. It just came out. I mean, we didn't prepare it. But it was related to car emissions, actually. And we started to say, this is how they voted. The socialists, you know, social democrats and the EPP, the Romanian liberals are EPP. That's another Romanian schizoidism. And it was so successful. I mean, successful. We had a few thousand people listening to it, which was quite something. So it caught on to them, and we used it for like 2 years. It was so. See, there are ways. That's my point, in matters of communication, at least. I want to ponder a little on Lina's mention of Euroscepticism. And it's again a Romanian thing. Maybe you agree because you're my Romanian brother. I think the only legislative initiative in good legislation, environmental legislation, in Romania has the European Commission. Strictly so. So any other constitutional channels within Romania, which would be the government, would be citizen initiatives or, you know, committees, little committees, or a bunch of MPs from Romania, they don't do anything about it. And it's always this feeling of surprise. You know, there is a European directive, it has to be transposed, and oh my God, that's crazy. Well, we have to reduce emissions of cars. This is, okay, let's do it. And they have to do it, like at 2 years or whatever the time of transposing is. So, would you agree with me, Hans?
Yeah, we are. The fact that you are members of the EU simply helps because it's one more authority above the Romanian government that peeks over the shoulder of the government. They know that somebody's watching, so yeah, it helps.
It's so nice to see them crouch like, oh, hey, we have to take this. Today I was on TV and it was like, okay, the EU is imposing this. That's a bummer, but hey, we have to go on. It's like, okay, cool, nice. I want to tell Michał something. The birds and habitats directives, I think they were always, or at least cyclically, under a fitness check. It was the first one, this is from my memory, but in the second Barroso Commission, it happened. In the first Juncker Commission, it happened. Now the second von der Leyen, it happens again. It's always a big pressure from the lobbyists to which somehow they find sensitivities in this respect only in the EPP. The EPP, if you ask me, is a little version of fascism, of the new fascists that came in. I'm serious. And this extreme conservative facet that they have, I link it more to MAGA. But we saw the Red Hat Riding Hood and all that stuff,
Notice the blue eyes and blonde hair.
Yeah, well, we talked about it yesterday, and we're going to mention it as well. I would like to sell a concept now, because yesterday we talked about judicial stuff and all that, but I see that as a concept. We're not using the concept. It's very American nowadays, especially in the American academia. And Mary, you should foster it. It's environmental justice.
Oh, yeah.
It's really, really important.
No one actually gives a shit about it.
The academia at least, and if it's there, it might, spread out.
A lot of lip service is paid, but
the thing is that in Europe we don't really have, this thing of native populations or indigenous people or nations, local, with the exception of the Scandinavian part. And we happen to work with it during the People's Climate case, especially in Sweden with the Samis. And there's another facet of this thing, and probably the most important. It was mentioned yesterday, I forgot who mentioned it, but I'm saying that communities' souls in matters of fairness and access to jobs or to whatever, to the fruits of the earth, really, their souls are being taken over by the corporations. I mean, they're winning the hearts of the people, selling them this very dogma, because in Central and Eastern Europe we believe in dogmas, and the last one is Reaganism, that we still didn't wake up out of it, and they're selling jobs. These are my 4 points.
Marta, you had actually a real interesting kind of an approach, because you see, on the one side we know that people care about forests. On the other side, there is no forest movement, as Michael has pointed out. So there is actually no way of people expressing sort of their positive feelings towards forests. And I think, we have, especially in the Red campaign, we knew we had to reach out to the public, and we were always looking at the big NGOs like Greenpeace and WWF, and they never did anything. And, I think that might actually be the absolute wrong track, And what you did was actually you built on something that already existed. And there was a kind of a critical mass that was generated through your persistence, and then sort of you actually managed to sort of connect those people and to make them actually political actors. And I just wonder, in Germany, you might have a lot of different kinds of initiatives, but are they as politically active as the Polish ones? Because, in any case, here might be actually something to really build on. There might be sort of a way of reaching out to people the way that you show an example, maybe in Germany's example, actually I don't know other ones, but that might be sort of the way forward. Because when you create enough sort of commotion on the ground, you're going to reach the EU level one way or the other,
Well, just about 15 or 20 minutes ago, I found out that Estonia really is planning to start hunting lynx again. They want to allow the killing of about 65 lynx per year. And the population we have now is, well, we don't know exactly, because the hunters are giving the data and they are not very impartial, as we all understand. So we're speaking about 700-800 lynx, perhaps the maximum. Well, the data varies. But, well, what we will do about it now, we will contact lawyers. We will prepare a legal case, preliminary protection ruling, I think, or something like that in English, so that when they adopt the quota, it takes some time, but today was the meeting, that we will go to court, and then we will start an social media campaign, and we will show such kind of sweet, cute links. So we will work with nice drawings, also photos. There are lots of nice photos of lynx in Estonia. So lots of nature photographers taking photos. So we have prepared the messages. So we will start bombarding social media with nice messages about how links don't attack people, how you should be really lucky and glad when you meet links in nature, etc., etc. And then at least my NGO will also claim that if we really have so many of them, then knowing that Scotland and the northern part of England want to reintroduce them, well, the Lifescape project has this preparative thing going on, then we could send them there. You know, they are looking for at least 20 links to start the population. You know, you don't have to shoot them. And I'm sure we can find some other countries, because links really, they attack like, I don't know, like 3 or 5 sheep per year.
They mostly eat mice, right?
They eat roe deer, they eat different birds, they eat mice, they eat frogs. I have also taken photos of lynx who just walk down the forest road and they catch mice or frogs, something that's there in the ditch. Well, clearly not nothing, and I was not afraid at all. So we will start that campaign. I don't know what will come of it, but I have the feeling that the broad Estonian public would support us, because lynx really don't attack people. It's different with wolf and bears. You know, after the Second World War, wolves, well, they did attack people, at least in Estonia. And then it is a little bit controversial, so you can't say that they would never, ever be a danger. But with lynx, it is easier. And so we will do everything we can to oppose it with some legal action and sweet campaign.
I guess even if wolf kill people, people kill more people than wolf. I mean, just look at
stray dogs, of course.
Yeah.
Well, absolutely.
Sorry, but wolves don't kill people. In the last 50 years, I think there was one person that in the EU. So, yeah. Wolves don't kill people in general. It's more dangerous to cross the street than to meet a wolf.
Facing a whole string of fairy stories, really. That's what we're surrounded by. In a slightly jocular fashion, give a prize to the first person who can write a fairy story that sends Little Red Riding Hood to prison for endangering a threatened species. More seriously, I completely agree with this issue of localism, but I think you've got to have a multiple approach. There isn't a silver bullet. Capacity building, I mentioned at length, I'm not going to repeat everything I said yesterday about the economic, the enterprise and the financial aspects. The sector does need strengthening hugely in its ability to use those, starting with the forest monitoring law. The obvious block at the moment, it's not just sovereignty, it's those who see it as an extra expense, an extra administrative burden. Point out to them how they can earn money off it rather than it being the opposite, and you're starting to convert people. But I think that leads on to a much bigger issue, and that is that the agriculturalists, the farmers, the foresters, even the fishermen, all combined, and we've used this figure often, are less than 2.5% of gross domestic product. And yet the consequences where they don't manage properly, and I do mean where they don't manage properly because we need a healthy sector for all 3 areas, hit the other 97.5%. And we're not utilizing that hugely bigger proportion in our defense. Starting with the ELO, as I mentioned yesterday, we know that Jürgen Tack, who's the Director General, is more than eager to come and ally with us and help in the immediate future with this issue of the forest monitoring law and the working day to see how we can actually get immediate funding out of ecosystem services. Even Fanny Pom Lang of CEPF, who represents the commercial timber producers, recognizes that a lot of her smaller members, and she claims to represent 7 million enterprises across the EU, would actually benefit from usage of ecosystem services rather than felling for timber. Those are just 2 examples, but there are plenty more. And we're not even beginning to actually reach across to them and discover the common ground. And collectively, particularly if you throw in the taxpayers' alliances and the consumer alliances, you've got a much, much stronger position. And if I may, just taking up your analogy with the previous health check, and you're quite right, there is a cyclic element to this, but if you go back the odd 8 to 10 years when that took place, two things have changed since. First of all, the sector that we're confronted with has really pretty much shrunk by a quarter in terms of its relative input related to the rest of the economy. And the fact they are so strong in lobbying, in the immediate term, of course, it's strength and we're up against it, but it's actually a position of weakness. Large sections of those two sectors would go out of business if they were not properly supported by inappropriate policy or subsidies. And those subsidies are there because of political support, which means they're not sustainable anyway. The long-term budget for those sectors will fall regardless. So it's in their interests to reach across and embrace a wider set of income. And that is another agenda that we're not using at the moment. And I seriously think let's go for localism, but let's also build this alliance at top level. It's a very good double, and I think it's the best strategy we've got.
Michal said that what changes things or what has potential to change things are protests, yeah, like massive protests. And I'm just wondering, I don't have an answer for this, why farmers can mobilize and go from different parts of Europe on their tractors to Brussels, and we're having such a theoretical big constituency and this 95% of support for protecting forests and so on that Marta was showing, why we cannot mobilize and why we cannot have what we had in 2019 for climate, meaning this, you know, we mentioned here the how is it called even Fridays for Future, yeah, Fridays for Future protests. So like, what can we do? I know that it was very much spontaneous also, and there were many factors. But what can we do to do something like this, to create, to help, to help incubate such a mobilization?
With farmers, I think they feel that this issue really concerns them. Like in advocacy, you have the sort of, I think the word is the saliency of issue, like how urgent and how relating to you the issue is. So, for example, if you ask me about my views on some issue I don't care that much about I don't know, like reading to children, there are active, like I feel it's important, but I'm not going to go and protest or like speak to politicians about it. So I feel that as someone was saying, this issue is going to become salient pretty soon, but because, for example, if you have issues with flooding or with drought, yeah, and actually I have a farmer friend who is ecologically minded. He's just too afraid to speak to his friends about it. And his idea was, my farmer friends, they're going to care about ecology when their wells dry up. And this is it's too late. So I think it is about being a bit, I mean, it's not being populist, it's just showing people the real crisis. And I also feel that what is a problem is that these issues, they exist in some kind of a silo, which is you are this echo person. And for a long time, I'm not sure if I'm able to catch it properly, but these people who were, I actually used to think that too, that these issues are important, these green issues, and I really support these people, but they're a bit different, you know. They're weird, they're weirdos, a bit. This is what I thought. They would chain themselves to the trees. So when we started, I really took care that we are not put into the drawer. We always said, like, personally, I don't believe that there are normal people, but I would always say that we are regular folks, like, you know, because then you are not put into this drawer, and you can really argue that this is the issue that the politicians should really think about, and it is possible to hold them accountable, not these strange green issues. So it's about this issue becoming salient soon enough, and not when it's too late.
Okay, so I also have a reflection of stuff that I think of working, and now I'm really tired, so I am sorry I'm not speaking in my native language, and brain is not fully braining, but I'm going to do my best. For me, it's simple because I see it as a symbol in my head, and it's a bridge. And this bridge takes different forms in different part of this ecosystem. And I'm not only talking about the forest ecosystem, I'm talking about this ecosystem of people in different levels, in different countries in Europe. And I always remind myself of that. Who is the bridge? Am I the bridge? What type of bridge am I? And it could be as simple as every time you stop a logging, or if you have the opportunity to talk about your local forest, you always learn about a struggle in another country, or in another Sami village, or in another part of your country. Not here, not anywhere. That's the first thing. Then you bridge a network, externally and internally. And then I feel like a bridge 50 hours a week, because I'm in this Europe bubble, in this Brussels bubble, and I meet people with power that still doesn't know the difference between many trees and a forest. And I need to translate the difference between the two of them maybe 4 times a day. And then I go back to my scientist friends and my biology friends, and I can go into a forest and I can find a species that is the proof that this ecosystem has been there for 650 years. And someone tells me it's renewable. It's not true. And then I have all this scientific evidence, and I have this fast-growing grassroots movements of people learning to map the forest, and then they have something to say, and then they call me and they say, I just want to talk to the EU, because then I need to translate this EU body, because they don't see the legislation for this whole kaleidoscope, and I'm a bridge again. And I'm like, okay, in what level do you want to influence? Who are you talking to? And then 5 times a day I need to explain the difference between the Commission and the Council. And this bridge needs to be strengthened in both ways. People who knows forest doesn't know the kaleidoscope of EU, and EU, this body, doesn't know the ecosystem forests. And the link between water and forest I cannot underline enough. And then I think a lot of what you said, one last sentence, I think the last time I feel like a bridge is when I translate facts so it's understandable. We talk about CO2 concentrations in the atmosphere. I talk about it all the time, but I don't use that sentence. My heart does not skip a beat for the atmosphere per se. But if the atmosphere is full of CO2, people will suffer, flee, die. Talk about sheep being killed. Sheep are force killed due to droughts and due to heat waves. This is about safety, resilience, water cycles, soil health. I can go on. If we are not preserving the only thing that are protecting us, if we are burning our storages as single-use paper instead of single-use plastic, or biofuels instead of fossil fuels, we are going backwards into the future. And I can tell that to people, and people will say, that sounds really scary. And all that boils down to the concentration of CO2 in the atmosphere. But you cannot mention that, because then people have zoomed out. So then you're a bridge again. You know the data, but you can't talk like that.
Okay, may I just briefly just touch upon the protests, because it's quite important. Some of us mentioned the farmers' protests. I don't think that these are the protests that we actually need. Those protests were very much orchestrated by big lobbyist groups, Copa Cogeca and stuff like that. And the farmers were blocking the streets with tractors they bought from subsidies from the Common Agriculture Policy. So it was a complete wicked stuff, you know, craziness. Like, no, this is not the kind of protest we need. What the kind of protest we need were those Fridays for Future, but just keep in your mind the climate movement has started way before Greta Thunberg's parents were born, you know, some early 70s, maybe 80s. it took decades until the protests related to this idea of climate, responsibility were relevant and effective. And in many aspects, they came too late. The best time for actually introducing Green Deal was the 80s, to me, based to the scientific proofs, so it was too late. But if there were these protests wouldn't happen, despite what we see outside of the windows, the climate crisis being really very present in our everyday life, I'm pretty much sure that we wouldn't have Green Deal on the table if there were no protests. So they have this strong movement potential that we need to exploit. But is the forest movement being present in the European context for decades already? Is it being concentrated about that single idea? What's the single idea actually of the forest movement? I don't think we have it. So let's get ready, or let's maybe grasp the idea that in order to be effective by a protest, that probably decades are ahead of us, and we might be at the beginning of the process. Despite having these data, despite having the case studies, despite having regional successes, blockades, all that stuff that happened, that the concentrated, really unified movement is not present in Europe. I'm afraid about that. Or maybe I'm wrong. Let's discuss on that. But I think that we are still very far away from being effective by protesting for better forests or for better agriculture in that regard. We don't have Greta Thunberg for agriculture. We don't have Greta Thunberg for forest. Unfortunately. So let's think in this essence about that as well.
I just want to quickly respond, because part of the problem, I think, is the multi-use aspect of forests. That there's even the most ardent forest, person working for forest protection, you can point at them and say, well, you live in a wood house, I've had this from foresters in the United States when you use wood, what do you want here? And this really complicates it. And it's made it difficult to come up with clear messaging, because even a lot of our allies are focused on, like Fern, for instance. Fern is a fantastic ally. I'm not condemning Fern in any way, but their thing is making forests work for nature and people, or whatever their tagline is. So we have to think about that. It's really desperate now that we save at least the old growth forests, but it's got to be so much more than that, because it's got to be about letting other forests mature into old growth and pro-forestation and all that, which means getting the EU to back off the bioeconomy, which is such a central plank of the EU's mitigation strategy, is that we're going to replace everything with wood. And it's not science-based, because their own scientists are saying, if you want to reduce carbon concentrations in the atmosphere, sorry, Lena, you need to just, growing forests is the best way to do it. Reducing logging is the best way to do it. And yet all of their policies are pointing in the opposite direction. And this takes in so many people, because it's so warm and reassuring to think we're going to fix nature by using nature more. And it's really an appealing concept to regular people who don't have the background to understand what, and I'm constantly arguing with people about this. So I'm not saying we can't do it, I'm just saying it's tricky to think about what the message needs to be.
Do you want me to try to summarize it? Yes.
So I would say no one here is against forestry. It's just as simple as following 3 simple rules. Knowing where to go, how to do it, what to produce. And stop listening to those companies who are ever expanding, always planting and burning the majority.
Thank you very much indeed. Thanks for you to come, and thanks for those who actually stayed for 2 days, but also those who couldn't, they had to leave earlier. We got about, 60 people, I think, showing up in the 2 days altogether, roughly, which is great. Thanks for the speakers, also especially those who had to travel from a distance here. In terms of the target, simplification, 15% of strict protection, meaning non-intervention. 15, that's at the minimum, and that's very easy to communicate, I think. No cutting of trees or whatever, and we shouldn't argue anything about this. I'd like to remind you about this is part of the civil EU presidency event. So Polish friends, I hope you will take it over later on. But within the presidency, actually the next conference is about environmental justice. It's not organized by us, but it's on the 19th of October. Also here in Budapest, it's organized by the Green Legal Platform, but we are going to help them, of course, because we offer a bit of a coordination for this whole stuff. In terms of one of the takes, there are so many issues that I will take from here, but the kind of topic that appeared basically during the 2 days was how to engage with scientists, and I wanted to show this to you, a letter. I hope, yes, that's an open letter. Today, we got 150 scientists so far to sign this up. They are asking a strong commitment of the European Union to old-growth forest ahead of the UN Convention, ahead of the COP16. So the signatory process was closed today. We got Stefan as one of the signatories, myself, Miroslav Svobod and Martin Mikoláš. But there are another 144 people. So if you are a scientist here in the room and you haven't signed it up yet, please do it. Today you can still do it. I can send you the link later on. We are going to send this to you and your colleague and the Hungarian presidency on Monday, basically, together with our statement, which, again, last thing, I would like to thank all of those who actually submitted a comment on the statement. We are going to finish it over the weekend and then send out on Monday to the EU, Ursula von der Leyen, try to convince her that Wolf is not a bad guy, and also to the Hungarian presidency.